Oh no, look at this beauty. This bear is actually chasing me. I shouldn't have done this selfie. It's too close. It's too close. Somebody help.
They say animals can be tamed, that some can even live beside us as companions. But not all creatures bow to the rules of man. Some remain wild, untouchable, and unpredictable, reminding us of the thin line between fascination and fatality. On a lonely mountain road in Romania, one traveler thought he had found beauty, a towering bear in the distance, the kind of encounter most people only dream of. He smiled, raised his phone, and pressed the button. But the image he captured wasn't a triumph of adventure. It was a ticking clock counting down his final moments. What followed was chaos, fear, and a tragedy so shocking that even the rescuers struggled to believe what they saw. This was not just another trip through the Carpathians. This was the last ride of Omar Farang Zin. How could a single selfie become a death sentence? And why do humans continue to underestimate the wild? Today we uncover the shocking truth. Welcome back to the Animal Quest channel, and if you're new here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories that the world will never forget. Omar Farang Zin was not just another tourist passing through Europe's mountains. At 48 years old, the Italian motorcyclist carried a restless spirit, a man who loved the open road, the wind against his face, and the thrill of capturing every adventure on camera. Friends described him as passionate, curious, someone who believed life was meant to be lived without fear. His phone was his diary, his lens a window into the beauty he sought wherever he went. In late summer, Omar found himself riding the famed Transfăgărășan Road, a twisting ribbon of asphalt carved through Romania's Carpathian Mountains. The road itself is legendary, called one of the most beautiful in the world, rising through misty peaks and plunging into dark valleys where legends of wolves and bears have endured for centuries. But beauty can be deceiving, and on that stretch of asphalt, danger often lurks just beyond the guardrails. For decades, Romania's Carpathians have been home to one of Europe's largest populations of brown bears. Powerful, intelligent, and unpredictable, these animals have learned to adapt to the presence of humans. Too often tourists, drawn by fascination or recklessness, stop to feed them, photograph them, or worse, treat them as tame creatures. And in those moments, the wild forgets its boundaries. Omar's motorcycle engine roared through the passes as the sun dipped low, painting the cliffs in gold. He stopped to admire the view, unaware that just beyond the tree line, a predator was watching. He raised his phone, smiled, and began to film. What he didn't know was that his fascination with the wild had already set a chain of events into motion that could not be undone. The Carpathian Mountains of Romania are not just a backdrop of breathtaking scenery, they are a kingdom of shadows, home to nearly half of Europe's remaining brown bear population. Estimates from conservation groups and government reports place the number between 6,000 and 7,000. It is a land where ancient legends of wild beasts are not just folklore, but daily reality. For locals, the bear is both a symbol of pride and a source of fear. For tourists, it is an irresistible spectacle. Along the Transfăgărășan Road, one of the most famous and dangerous highways in the world, the presence of bears has become almost expected. They wander near the guardrails, drawn by scraps of food tossed from passing cars. They appear at laybys where tourists gather not to fear them, but to marvel at them, as if they were part of the show. Parents lift children onto their shoulders for photographs, couples step dangerously close for selfies, and drivers slow their cars to feed bread and fruit to animals that weigh more than half a ton. But hidden beneath the wonder is a darker truth. Romanian authorities have long posted warnings along these routes, bright signs with bold letters cautioning visitors not to stop, not to feed, not to treat these predators as friendly companions. Wildlife experts echo the message, reminding the world that once a bear loses its fear of humans, it becomes something far more dangerous, a predator without boundaries. And yet, the warnings often go unheeded. Some believe the bears have become harmless beggars, accustomed to handouts. Others see the chance for the perfect photograph, a fleeting moment of bravery to post online. The government has recorded multiple incidents, attacks, maulings, and deaths linked directly to tourists who ignored those warnings. Each case is a stark reminder that curiosity can be fatal. Still, the cycle continues. Every summer, cars pull to the side of the road, doors open, phones raised, and snacks tossed like bait into the wild. Each moment that a bear accepts food from human hands is another step closer to tragedy, for the visitor and for the animal itself. And on that late afternoon in the summer of 2025, one man, an Italian adventurer named Omar Farang Zin, joined the long line of travelers who could not resist the pull of the wild. He saw beauty where there was danger, fascination where there was risk. He lifted his camera, immortalized the moment, and unknowingly placed himself at the center of a story that would end in horror. Because on the Transfăgărășan Road, the bears may look calm, even curious, but behind those eyes lie centuries of instinct, and once awakened, those instincts do not forgive mistakes. The footage recovered from Omar Farang Zin's phone reveals a man captivated, almost childlike in his wonder. Riding through the bends of the Transfăgărășan, he slows his motorcycle, parks by the roadside, and raises his phone. Just beyond the guardrail, a brown bear lumbers into view. Instead of fear, Omar's voice is filled with awe. He whispers into the microphone, calling the animal beautiful, his tone more admiring than cautious. The bear edges closer, drawn not by malice but by curiosity, and perhaps the scent of food long offered by passing travelers. In his excitement, Omar leans in, capturing every second, his voice trembling not with terror, but thrill. At one point, the bear moves directly toward his bike, sniffing at the metal, towering above the seat, its power undeniable. And still, Omar does not back away. His words echo through the recording like a haunting refrain. "It's coming towards me." To the camera, it feels harmless, almost cinematic, man and beast sharing a fleeting moment. But beneath that illusion was a silent danger. Experts later explained that these bears, conditioned by years of human interaction, no longer viewed people as untouchable. They had lost their fear. What might look like playfulness was in fact boldness, a step closer to seeing humans as part of their environment, and not always as friend. Family members back in Italy described Omar as someone who lived for adventure, a man who craved experiences others only dreamed of. But they also admitted he was unaware of how deceptive the wild could be. To him, the bear was magnificent, a once-in-a-lifetime encounter. To the bear, he was something else entirely, a stranger lingering too close, disrupting a fragile boundary that had been crossed too many times before. As he filmed, Omar seemed to believe he was in control, the camera shielding him from danger, the distance between him and the animal enough to keep him safe. But every step, every second spent lingering, was tightening a noose he could not see. The bear's movements grew sharper, its attention fixed, and in that stillness, the line between fascination and peril blurred beyond repair. What Omar chose to do next would not just alter the course of his journey, it would decide whether he would live to tell the story at all. The next morning, Omar Farang Zin set out once again along the Transfăgărășan. To most travelers, the first encounter with a bear would have been enough, an unforgettable brush with the wild, a story to tell back home. But for Omar, it wasn't finished. Something inside him pulled him back to that same stretch of road, as if the mountains themselves were calling him to return. According to reports later pieced together by investigators and local media, Omar stopped at nearly the same place where he had filmed the day before. Only this time, the scene was even more dangerous. The day before, he had filmed and photographed bears wandering near the roadside, even calling them beautiful as they approached his bike. Those images, smiling selfies, shaky clips of the animals turning their heavy heads toward him, were posted online. But Omar wanted more. That afternoon, he spotted her again. A mother bear, heavy-set, with her cubs lingering just beyond the trees. Where most saw danger, Omar saw an extraordinary chance. He parked his motorcycle, climbed off, and pulled out his phone. In one hand, he carried food. In the other, his camera. Witnesses later said they shouted at him not to approach, that the bear was too close, too unpredictable. But Omar stepped forward anyway. For a moment, the scene was almost surreal. His phone angled, his smile tense but proud. The bear sniffing, muscles tight beneath its fur, her eyes fixed on the man standing far too close. A photo snapped, the faint click of a camera, his own reflection mirrored in the glossy eyes of a predator. Then, everything exploded. The bear lunged. Her roar shattered the mountain silence. Claws tore into the dirt as she closed the distance in seconds. Omar dropped his phone, stumbling backward, but there was no escape. Witnesses later said the force of the impact was like watching a man hit by a truck. The bear's weight slammed him to the ground, teeth sinking, claws raking with feral precision. Motorcyclists who had stopped nearby screamed for help. Some hurled stones, others waved sticks in desperation, but their cries only fueled the chaos. The bear dragged Omar toward the ravine, his shouts echoing across the valley, a chilling mix of pain, panic, and disbelief. Only hours earlier, he had been laughing into his phone. Now he was fighting for his life against raw wilderness. For long, unbearable minutes, the mauling continued. Every attempt Omar made to fight back only provoked greater fury. Blood stained the grass and rock as the animal thrashed, asserting its dominance with terrifying finality. By the time silence fell again, Omar was motionless, his body dragged into the undergrowth. When rescuers, firefighters, police, mountain rescue, forestry officers finally arrived, their mission became a nightmare of its own. The same bear circled them, lunging again and again as they tried to reach the body. As Dragos Onia of Mountain Rescue later recalled, "The bear followed us the whole time. She was very agitated. She attacked us a few times too. But for Omar, there was no hope. The man who had come to Romania seeking adventure, who had paused on the roadside to capture beauty on his phone, had instead captured his own final moments. His cracked device was later found, still lit, with the haunting images of a bear closing in. This was not just an accident, it was part of a far darker pattern. Nearly 30 people have been killed by bears in Romania in the last 2 decades, a figure rising as shrinking habitats force predators closer to human settlements, and as tourists tempt fate for the sake of a photo. Omar's death would not only leave a family grieving in Samarad, Italy, but would also spark outrage and controversy in Romania, where authorities would soon make a grim decision about the bear herself, and what began as a holiday adventure ended as a warning to the world. And the question that lingers is this: how many more lives must be lost before the lesson is finally learned? The ravine was steep, its edges crumbling with each step, and the air was unnervingly still as the rescue teams advanced. Firefighters, mountain rescuers, police, and forestry officials moved together, their radios crackling with clipped, tense voices. But what they feared most was not silence. It was the sound that stalked them from the trees, the low growl of the same bear that had attacked. Omar Farang Zin's body was found where the animal had dragged him, deep among the rocks and undergrowth. His clothes were shredded, his body marked with brutal wounds. The scene was so violent, one rescuer whispered later, it was clear he never stood a chance. As they worked to recover him, the nightmare wasn't over. The bear returned, circling, lunging, charging the rescue party. "She followed us the whole time," recalled mountain rescuer Dragos Onia. "She was very agitated. She attacked us a few times too." Each attempt to move Omar's body was a race against another assault. When his phone was finally recovered, the truth it revealed was even more devastating. Inside were the selfies and clips he had taken the day before. Omar grinning beside the road as a bear lingered only feet away, his voice joking, "Look, a bear! How beautiful!" There were close-ups, too close, showing the animal turning toward him. They were the frozen timeline of a man unknowingly stepping closer to death. Authorities quickly confirmed what many already feared. Omar had been mauled to death after attempting to feed the bear. It was not simply an accident. It was a fatal consequence of crossing the thin line between curiosity and danger. Days later, rangers tracked and killed the same bear, citing public safety. But the decision ignited bitter debate. To some, it was justice. To others, it was another tragedy. Wildlife activists argued the bear had only acted by instinct, and that Omar's death should have been enough warning. In the mountains of Argeș County, the debate lingered long after the body was carried out. Was Omar the victim of nature or of his own choices? And as his final photos circulated, one haunting thought remained. If he had put down the phone and walked away, would both man and beast still be alive today? A man's last smile with death standing just behind him, waiting for the shutter to click. News of the tragedy broke across Romania within hours, carried first by local outlets in Argeș County, then by national broadcasters, and by dawn it had spread across Europe. Headlines were blunt, almost surreal. Man killed by bear after taking selfies. In Italy, where 48-year-old Omar Farang Zin had lived and worked for years, the phone rang in the early hours. His wife answered. What she heard was not the voice of her husband, but of a friend struggling to speak through sobs. Omar was gone. Her scream pierced the silence of their small home. Their children woke in confusion, only to be told what no child should ever hear, that their father would never return. In moments, their world collapsed. Neighbors in the Italian town where Omar had made his second home gathered in disbelief. Some offered food, some simply sat in silence, unsure what to say. A close friend remembered him as a man who never stopped smiling, who carried warmth wherever he went. The bitter irony that it was his smile in one final photograph that led to such devastation was unbearable. Back in Romania, those who had seen him hours before the attack were haunted. Witnesses replayed the scene in their minds. Omar stepping closer to the bear, laughing nervously, holding up his phone, ignoring the calls to stop. Some villagers admitted they wished they had tried harder to pull him back. Others confessed the truth, that fear had paralyzed them. Guilt spreads like an infection. Then came the storm of media. TV stations replayed shaky clips filmed from a distance, the sound of shouting, the chaos as the bear lunged. Social networks ignited with furious debate. Some condemned Omar for recklessness, others mourned him as a victim of modern obsession, a man who risked his life for one image. Hashtags trended across Europe, sparking endless arguments about vanity, technology, and the price of ignoring nature's boundaries. But perhaps the greatest outrage erupted when forestry authorities confirmed their decision. The bear, a female, had been tracked and shot. For officials, it was necessary. An animal that had killed once might kill again. But animal rights groups saw it as a second tragedy. In Bucharest, protesters gathered with signs, "The bear was innocent." International organizations like World Animal Protection condemned the decision, insisting the animal was only following instinct. The debate tore open deeper wounds. Was Omar's death the result of one man's choice, or of a society failing to keep wild creatures and human curiosity apart? Commentators drew chilling parallels to a growing global pattern. Between 2011 and 2017 alone, more than 250 people worldwide had died while attempting selfies, falling from cliffs, drowning, or, like Omar, underestimating the power of nature. In Argeș, the forest where the attack unfolded grew eerily quiet. Few wanted to walk the road where his phone had fallen, its screen still lit with his final attempt to capture the impossible. In Italy, his family mourned behind closed doors, shielding themselves from relentless reporters. Headlines meant nothing to them. What mattered was the empty chair at the table, the silence in a home once filled with his laughter. And as grief rippled across two countries, questions lingered. Could Omar have been saved if someone had acted differently? Should the bear have been spared? Would his death finally force the world to confront the dangers of the selfie obsession? Or would it fade into yet another statistic, another headline soon forgotten? The answers never came. What remained was the unbearable weight of absence, and one haunting truth, that a single photograph had cost two lives, one human and one animal. And in the silence left behind, one final question echoed. Will the world remember Omar with compassion, or only as a cautionary tale carved into the growing list of lives lost to the fatal lure of the camera? The death of the man who posed for a selfie with a wild bear in Romania became more than just a local tragedy. It was a sobering reminder of a growing global crisis. Authorities began pointing to a disturbing trend that had been quietly mounting for years, people dying while trying to capture the perfect photo. Government reports revealed a startling reality. In the past decade alone, Dozens of people worldwide had lost their lives while taking dangerous selfies. Some slipped from cliffs, their final images framed by beautiful landscapes just before the ground gave way. Others drowned, swept away by fast-moving rivers after edging too close for the perfect shot. There were those who misjudged the speed of oncoming trains, and others who underestimated the sheer unpredictability of wildlife. And in Romania, the tragedy with the bear was not an isolated case. Wildlife experts warned that the country had long struggled with human-bear conflicts. Romania, home to one of Europe's largest brown bear populations, had reported hundreds of incidents in recent years, from roadside encounters to aggressive charges in mountain villages. In some cases, hikers had been mauled after stumbling too close to a feeding bear. In others, locals trying to chase the animals away ended up fatally injured. Experts repeated a message that seemed painfully simple, yet too often ignored. Wild animals are not props for photographs. They are powerful, instinctive beings, and when cornered or provoked, even unintentionally, they can lash out with devastating consequences. This death, captured in fleeting, horrifying moments, forced both the public and the government to confront the uncomfortable truth. Technology and human vanity had begun colliding with nature in increasingly dangerous ways. And unless lessons were learned, it would not be the last time a selfie ended in tragedy. But the chilling question remained. If this could happen in broad daylight, on a road where others were watching, what other hidden dangers lay waiting in Romania's forests? In his final moment, Omar believed he was capturing beauty. Instead, he captured the thin line between wonder and tragedy. His story is not just about a single photo. It is about the danger of forgetting that wild animals are not props, and that a single choice can decide whether you walk away or never return. His last photo was his final warning. If stories like this move you, subscribe, like, and share to make sure Omar's story is remembered and to spread awareness before the next tragic headline.